In 1970, we had a few big, huge, centralized computers. They cost millions of dollars. Steve Jobs, just a couple of kids in a garage in Silicon Valley, they create the personal computer, and now everyone in this room today has a cell phone and connected to the human race at near zero marginal cost. Similarly, today we have a few power and utility companies in France, Europe, and the world. They generate centralized power, we buy it. But already, the feed-in tariffs for renewables have been successful. They're now in 61 countries, every day a new country. So you can get premium for sending renewable energy back to the grid to encourage early adopters. So now we have several million buildings in Europe producing some green electricity, most of it all in 10 years. In 10 years from now, we will have tens of millions of buildings all over the world producing some small amounts of green electricity. And in 20 years from now, we will have several hundred million existing and new buildings on this planet producing some green electricity. And I say that with confidence, unless we have some catastrophic blowback that we cannot possibly imagine, because solar and wind are on the same exponential curve as computer chips. The chairman of IBM, Watson, I guess it was in the 1950s, they asked how many computers will we need? He said 4. That was the head of IBM. We'll need 4 computers, too expensive. They didn't anticipate computer chips and Moore's Law, where we found we were doubling the knowledge and halving the cost for computer chips every 2 years, 20 years, exponential curve. We're on a 20-year curve right now in solar and wind. And the cost has plummeted. More capacity, cheaper price. Within 10 or 15 years from now, I'm telling you here, you young people, you're going to be able to have harvesting technology, solar, wind, small wind, geothermal, biomass converters. They're going to be as cheap as your cell phone. Now, the reason that's hard to anticipate, let me share you, I don't think I did last time, this whole deal about exponential curves. When I was 13 years old, the kid across the street challenged me. His name was Butchie O'Connor. I still remember this. He said, I will give you $1 million. Or, I'll give you $1. And you can double that dollar every day for 30 days. Which one? So I said, give me the $1 million. You got me again. He said, take out your pencil and paper. This is hard for the human race to grasp exponentiality. We think in the business community in linear terms, not exponential terms. So I took the $1, second day $2, $4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128. After about 13 doublings, I got the speed. It's only about, $8,000, $9,000 here. The next 6 doublings knocked my socks off. When I got to doubling 31 times, I was at $1 million. Exponentiality looks flat and then it goes straight up. We are right now, metaphorically, at the straight up line right now. Wind's in parity, solar's moving to parity across the world in 3 years, and the entire utility industry of Germany is being wiped out by near zero marginal cost green electricity. It's 23% of the grid, heading to 35% right now. And guess who's producing all that energy? Vittel, RWE, millions of people like you in producer and consumer cooperatives. They're prosumers. They're producing, consuming, and sharing in the third industrial revolution right now in Germany. Nobody anticipated this. Pillar 3, we have to store the green electricity because the sun isn't always shining here in northern France. Sometimes the wind's blowing at night, we need the electricity during the day, so we're in favor of all storage technologies, flywheels, batteries, capacitors, water pumping. But we put a lot of focus, as I said before, on hydrogen. Well, we like them all, but hydrogen's an ideal storage technology to store these energies. Like you store media and digital, you can store renewable energy in the form of hydrogen and other storage technologies. Pillar 4, this is where the internet intervenes and converges with the new distributed energies. We're beginning to transform the electricity grid to an energy internet, the electricity lines. So when millions of you are creating your own green electricity, storing it in hydrogen, then if you don't need some of that green electricity in your home, office, or factory, 1 million buildings in this region, program your app, open source, not proprietary, not controlled by the utility companies, open source, take your little app on your cell phone and program that green electricity to sell it across the energy internet all the way to Ireland and to the doorsteps of Russia. Just like you create information, store it in digital, share it online, it's already here. It's actually in pockets. It's not academic. Yeah. And Pillar 5, electric vehicles are here, transport and logistics. Fuel cell vehicles in 2016, all 6 major auto companies. You'll be able to plug in your vehicles, get green electricity anywhere in this region, and every single parking space in this region is going to have a plug. Just a plug to the grid, to the energy internet. Plug in, get green electricity, or program your computer in your car when you're at work. It'll monitor the electricity grid, and when the price goes up for electricity, your software and your computer will direct you to sell your electricity back to the grid. You make money. You're now in the energy business. We already are doing this in pockets across Europe, in some places. These 5 pillars alone are nothing. When we put them together, we have a completely new general purpose technology platform for this region and for the world. It's brand new. Only when you put them all together. It's an infrastructure. In the second industrial revolution, it wasn't enough to have the internal combustion engine. In order to mass produce cheap cars, you had to have centralized electricity. Then Henry Ford could have electric power tools that would allow them to bring the work to the workers with mobile electric power tools, and that's why he could put out millions of cheap cars. So you needed the car, you needed centralized electricity for the factories, for cheap consumer goods and products and services. Then we needed the road systems to travel the vehicles on. Then we needed to incentivize the build out of suburbs, so we stretched our spatial habitats. But then we needed the telephone to wire into the rural areas so we could communicate across wide distances and create bigger markets. You had to have them all together, and then you had to have the gasoline and oil pipelines in. They all come in together. That second industrial revolution, centralized electricity, power and oil and gas pipelines, internal combustion engines, the road systems and suburbs, together, it was a platform. And when our industries plugged into the platform, the infrastructure, we increased our productivity from 3% in my country in 1905 to 14% in 1980 by plugging into that platform. Then we leveled off. This third industrial revolution changes the efficiency and productivity dramatically. The music companies did not understand this. When all the young people started file sharing music, creating software, the music companies thought it was one big joke. They went out of business in 5 years. Lateral power. The newspapers, we have the media here, the newspapers, they didn't see, and the television stations, they didn't see that blogosphere coming. Billions of people sharing audio, video, text, news, entertainment at near zero marginal cost. They're now going under or creating blogs, trying to reinvent themselves. I'm in publishing. We have been just hammered by the near zero marginal cost of information on the internet. This is a revolution. But as powerful as this internet revolution has been, we've democratized communication. We're all equal to each other in our ability to communicate across the world, right? When we take the internet and we join it to distributed energy, we have to envision 20 years from now, several billion families, businesses, generating their own green electricity and sharing it on an internet. What really is this third industrial revolution? This is what I didn't cover last time. Siemens, IBM, Cisco, General Electric, they're putting ads out all over the TV, and they're talking about the smart city, the Internet of Things, the industrial internet, the intelligent civilization, correct? But I kind of realized that they weren't quite putting it all together. Most of it was about how we use information and data to increase our efficiencies. I met with Siemens last May. Mr. Loescher, who was then chairman of the board, asked me to come in, and we had his board of directors and 20 of his top people there for half a day. They were one of the big players of the 37th largest company. And I said, look, we need to understand what this third industrial revolution is going to do. And this is what it's going to do in Nord-Pas-de-Calais. These 5 pillars create the first intelligent platform for economic activity in history. All the other platforms have been pretty dumb. Communication, energy, but they couldn't talk to each other. This third industrial revolution that we're going to lay down, I should say that you're going to lay down in this region, it's going to connect everything to everything. Open source for everybody, so no one can control it in one hand. You control it with your apps. That means sensors and software across these 5 pillars will connect to everything in the value chain in the region. That is, they'll connect sensors and software to your raw resources that are coming into the port facility. We will know what's happening on the production lines at your steel factories or your other factories on how much production is going on the line and how much electricity it costs at that moment. We will know what the price of electricity is on the grid. We will know whether there's going to be wind forecast in 2 hours for cheaper electricity. We will know what's going on with your great transport facilities from Dunkirk through your distribution houses, how much is in the warehouses, and what freight is on the trucks and where it's going, because everything's going to be connected. We already have billions of sensors. We're going to have 100 billion of these sensors pretty quick in 20 years. Open source, available to everybody on your app. So what does this mean? These 5 pillars create the Internet of Things. And there are 3 internets in one system. An information internet, which we already have, an energy internet, which we're now developing, and a logistics internet, which is just emerging. These 3 internets, information internet, communication, energy, and logistics, allow us to monitor the value system across the entire society moment to moment. And anyone can do it. It's going to be open source, not intellectual property. That means at any given moment here in Nord-Pas-de-Calais, you can go up with your app and you can check out various data across the entire system, moment to moment. And with that big data, you can then use advanced analytics and you can program it in your computer. And that advanced analytics will allow you, or a small business, or a big business, to then create algorithms like you have in Facebook and other places now. Those algorithms will allow you to create software so that you, whether you're a homeowner, a small business, a 3D printer, or a big company, you will be able to monitor your efficiencies, thermodynamic efficiencies across your own value chain, decrease your energy use, and dramatically increase your productivity. We used to believe that there are 2 factors in productivity in economics: better machines, better workers. But when Robert Solow won the Nobel Prize in Economic Growth Theory, he said the problem is you've got a problem. Those 2 factors only account for about 14% of productivity. Where's the other 86%? You didn't know. The economists didn't know. They call it the Solow residual. Now we know. 20 years later, a new generation of economists and physicists and engineers have put in a 3rd factor: machine performance, worker performance, and thermodynamic efficiency of useful work. When you plug in that 3rd factor year by year, from 1905 to today, it accounts for most of the other 86% of the productivity. Henry Ford could have told you this. He wasn't actually the brightest guy around. But what he said, they said, how could you put out a cheap car? He said, centralized electricity gave me mobile electric power tools, which really increased the productivity. I could put out millions of cheap cars as long as they were all black. You can't choose your color. So what does this have to do with this region? This 5-pillar infrastructure, 3 internets in one: the information internet, the energy internet, the logistics internet, and all 3 are monitoring for you and me and anyone else big data, analytics, predictive algorithms, so we can create our own software to increase our efficiencies and dramatically increase the productivity of the region. And we can move productivity. Remember I told you it went from 3% efficiency in 1905 to 14% in my country. Second Industrial Revolution leveled in the 1980s. This region here can take productivity from 14% to over 40% in the next 25 years. Dramatic. But this means a huge, dramatic increase in productivity by using less energy and all of it renewable and off carbon. So contrary to the traditional economic wisdom of the Second Industrial Revolution that increased sustainability as at the expense of productivity, they got it totally wrong. The Third Industrial Revolution, Internet of Things, these 5 pillars, allows dramatic increase in productivity by increasing our thermodynamic efficiencies, using less energy to get more work, and creating prosperity for our post-carbon age. It's a big deal with the human race. We're going to put the new business models in. I know there's a lot of talk here in the region about 3D printing. We have a big section in the master plan on it. You're going to be able to democratize manufacturing like we democratize information and now energy. Let me say one more thing about the energy. You know why the old energy industries are terrified? What they saw in Germany? The sun is free. The wind is free. The heat under your ground is free. Your garbage, converted energy, it's all free. So just as the old companies were aghast when they saw near zero marginal cost on the internet, we're going to near zero marginal cost of energy. And all of us, whether you're in Senegal or Cambodia or North Pas-de-Calais, we don't have to be in an economy of scarcity anymore. We can create our own information and our own energy, and it's non-polluting and renewable for our kids with high productivity. That's what's happening in Germany and Denmark. It's what's going to happen here in this region. Let me talk about the plan. This year-long exercise, this collaborative exercise, you will read the plan up on the web. How many have looked at the website already? How many have looked at the website? It's pretty detailed, is it not? Very detailed. But let me give you some of the broad programs that are being initiated right away, and President Vasseur will go into much more detail, but what hit my eye, the projects that the regions have chosen. But before I do that, let me preface this. What this plan really is all about is not just increased productivity. What you're actually doing here in this region is you're changing the consciousness. You're changing how we think of human life and our relationship to the planet. That's the real journey. It's the narrative. The technology is just the instrument. We have lived in a geopolitical world since the beginning of the industrial age. Because the idea was to take all the great commons of the planet, the ocean, the land, ideas turned into intellectual property, take a hold of the electromagnetic spectrum and sell it off, patent the genes. We have been enclosing all of the land, the oceans, all the great commons, and we've turned it into private property, marketized. But in doing so, our nations fought each other for the resources. And we had a geopolitical world for 2 centuries. The Third Industrial Revolution allows us to change the human story from a competitive Darwinian geopolitical struggle to becoming embedded in a biosphere community in less than 2 generations, if we can get there in time, if we're mindful. What is the biosphere? The biosphere is the sheath from the stratosphere to the depths of the oceans, where all chemical and living processes are in a very complex choreography, feeding back information to each other, geochemicals and living processes, and that feedback allows the entire organism called the biosphere to actually function. For example, if you have too much oxygen on the planet, and we're emitting too much, we burn out. If we have too little, life is extinguished. So one of the current theories, for example, on oxygen, is that when oxygen reaches a certain level, it triggers bacteria and that's the most of the life forces, bacteria, to emit methane, which goes into the atmosphere and dampens the oxygen cycle. Now, these are the theories we're starting to develop in the atmospheric sciences. We're just at the beginning of understanding the complexities of this indivisible community where the health and well-being of each species and each ecosystem absolutely depends on the well-being of the rest of the system. It is functioning similar to a living organism. It's not, but it's an analogy.